Konferansımızın ilk oturumuna hepiniz tekrardan hoş geldiniz. İlk oturumumuz Dijital Dünyada Uyumun Yeni Kodları başlığı altında ele alınacaktır. Panel sırasında soldaki kapıyı tercih etmenizi rica ediyoruz. Konuşmacılarımız Sade Yazılım ve Danışmanlık Kıdemli Müşteri Başarı ve İş Geliştirme Müdürü İlkay Aydoğdu, Nice Actimize Anti-Money Laundering Sales Strategy Lead Muken Ladva, International Compliance Association Vice President Tim Tyler, QNB Türkiye İç Kontrol ve Yasal Uyum Başkanı Sercan Kısas'ı sahneye davet ediyorum.
Nasıl oturacağız?
Ben şöyle geçeyim siz.
Tamam.
Evet, günaydınlar. Merhaba herkese, sayın başkanlarım, kamu kurumlarının değerli temsilcileri, saygıdeğer katılımcılarımız. QNB Türkiye olarak sizleri bugün burada ağırlamaktan dolayı büyük bir memnuniyet duyuyoruz. Ben bir kez daha hepinize hoş geldiniz diyorum. Sevgi ve saygılarımı sunuyorum. İlk oturumumuzda dijital dünyada uyumun yeni kodlarını konuşacağız. Birbirinden değerli konuşmacılarımız bugün aramızda. Yurt dışından gelen misafirlerimiz de var. O yüzden ilk oturumumuzu İngilizce gerçekleştireceğiz. Arzu eden katılımcılarımız için de anlık çeviriler Türkçe olarak kulaklıklar üzerinden dinlenebilir. Ben müsaadenizle ilk oturumu başlatıyorum. Sorry and thank you for your patience for the quick Turkish introduction. So welcome to our session titled The New Codes of Compliance in a Digital World. So today we will basically explore the digitalization, the AI, the data, and the new financial technologies in a digital world. So I'm very pleased to introduce our distinguished speakers with you. Let me start with Mr. Tim Tyler. He's the Vice President at the International Compliance Association, bringing more than 40 years of experience in global compliance and law enforcement, which is including the National Crime Agency in UK, as he was heading the International Crime Bureau for almost 10 years in UK. Welcome, Mr. Tim.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Mukin Ladva. He is AML Sales Strategy Lead at Nice Actimize, specializing in advanced AML and financial crime analytics across Europe, Middle East and Africa, with also more than 30 years of experience. Also, he is an expert with deep knowledge in AI, LLMs, machine learning, natural language processing, and intelligent automation. Welcome, Mr. Mukin. We have Ms. İlkay Aydoğdu. She is the Senior Customer Success and Business Development Manager at Sade Software with more than 18 years of experience in global companies also, especially in compliance technologies and data-driven solutions. She's also holding internationally accepted certifications such as CASI and PMP. And myself, as the moderator of this session, Sercan Kısas. I am the Chief Internal Control and Compliance Officer at QNB since 2024, with also more than 18 years of experience, mainly in internal audit, compliance, risk management, as part of the internal system functions in the financial and real sector. So today in this session we will walk through four key areas, as we will start with the changing risk landscape. Then we will focus on the skills transformation and the impact of the organizations. We will, of course, since we have the experts here, we will deep dive the advanced analytics. And we will try to conclude with the strategic outlook. So I would like to start with Mr. Tim on this, with a quick question as an introduction. So Tim, as the digitalization accelerates, the risk landscape is also transforming in both scale and the complexity. So how do you see this risk level of changing in a digital world?
I think before answering that, it's important to put it into context. So the technology is driving significant change, but that doesn't happen in isolation. We're seeing huge geopolitical challenges and change at the moment. The legal and the regulatory expectations continue to escalate. but there's some divergence globally around what they look like. And the criminal threat continues to mutate. It's using the new technologies that we'll be talking about against us. And of course, we have a responsibility to respond to that. So the risk landscape isn't isolated to technology. But within the context of technology, I think it's useful to touch on a few things. Firstly, and maybe I'm stating the obvious, but the change is unprecedented. I don't think we've seen, certainly in our careers, change taking place at this speed. And it's layered, so the change isn't isolated to one area. We might think of AI, but actually there are many other technological changes that have an impact on this. And so they react and act against each other, creating additional levels of complexity. I think something else that's worth highlighting is this is presenting challenges that we haven't seen before or even conceived of before. So a good example might be the risk of cognitive atrophy. As we are increasingly outsourcing our thinking, our planning, not just the hard work, but some of the technical work to AI, then there is a very real risk that we and our staff will over time lose those core skills like critical thinking, understanding of the business or the compliance environment, because we allow AI to pick it up. So that's something that's quite new, and we're having to think very differently around how we respond to that. But I think just one more thing to say, and I think that is recognizing that so much of what we do is data-driven and data underpinned. And that offers us opportunities that we've not had before, but it also creates a level of uncertainty and complexity that we haven't had before, as not only have we got layered technology, but we have levels of data that themselves are unprecedented.
Okay, thank you, team. Your point, even later to concentrated and the hidden risks, are giving us some foundation to shift to the technological lens in this regards. So let me continue with Mr. Mukin in this area. From your work across the region, Europe, Middle East, Africa, what trends do you observe in the adoption of AI, the data analytics in the financial crime solutions?
We're seeing a lot of changes through the whole journey from data through to detection, through to investigation. The use of AI from the very beginning, when from the inception of grabbing that data, whether it's transactional data, whether it's shareholder, UBO information, whatever it may be, creating that initial network and understanding that then is used within the next step, which is through the detection area, to understand if there's any suspicious activities taking place, creating the alerts, creating a efficient environment for analysts to undertake investigation, right? We're seeing AI being used at every single step of this journey, through to even, creating a SAR narrative, which is then sent through to the National Crime Agency, right? So we're seeing different technologies being used at different areas throughout the whole process. Everyone may have heard of entity resolution, right at the inception of grabbing that initial data, through to using machine learning processes for detection, for anomaly detection, through to using large language models in investigation to create much more efficient investigation, through to creating a efficient mechanism to actually file your SARs through to the National Crime Agencies. So we're seeing different levels of adoption. There's pushback also from organizations in terms of we're not ready until there's the full governance and we've got explainability. You know, we can't just let AI make a decision without us actually being able to actually, you know, provide evidence to the regulator, right? So, as a vendor, NICE Actimize is a vendor of AML software. We can't just push out AI without having that full governance. I have conversations with regulators across my region. So I look after Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And you know, on a monthly basis, I speak with the NCA, with BaFin, etc., CEPLAC in Spain, etc. So, and we have conversations in terms of, right, we're looking to improve this area. And the first question they ask is, all right, that's fine, but how are you going to prove and provide evidence? Because if as a regulator, if I go to our financial organizations and ask them questions, you need to ensure that you're providing them enough information to actually give evidence that they're doing the right thing, whatever that right thing is, right? So I'm seeing a lot of changes across the whole spectrum, which is exciting times, but we need to have, it needs to be governed, and we need to provide governance and evidence all the way throughout the whole journey.
Okay, thank you. Great insights, Mukin. So let's now look at how these technological trends are perceived inside the institutions. So I would like to continue with you, İlkay Hanım. What are the common trends that you see in the use of AI and other technologies in the compliance processes?
In compliance units, actually, locally and globally, we have, of course, many differences, especially in Turkey. Locally, we are not heavily using, AI in all its aspects. Of course, when we talk about AI, there are a lot of different capabilities, like we have LLMs, we have synthetic data, we have generative AI, we have machine learning and predictive analytics, network analytics. But mostly in our projects here that we do with SAS and SAD, we use mostly machine learning to diminish, false positive alerts, to improve the rules and scenarios, to predict the detection of behavior of fraud patterns, because now the data is digitalized, and since we are ingesting the data from mobile apps or from the internet branches, then we will be actually establishing the rules and scenarios on a single data model, which is actually one of the key grounds that we need to build our fraud monitoring and AML monitoring systems on. So we actually use a lot of automation through AI and machine learning when we are doing this data ingestion and establishing this data model. Then we use machine learning actually to detect what is false positive and try to understand from the responses of the actual users in the AML departments what is wrong going in the rules, or is the predictive model working properly, etc. We also use heavily network analytics, which is actually, like Muka said, we are actually dividing the data into entities, which is like one is account, customer, the beneficiary owner, etc. And through this entity resolution, we are actually trying to identify the hidden patterns that a normal user wouldn't be able to do in the network. And we actually feed it back into the alert mechanisms usually. Like Mukin said, in case management, there is a lot of large language models trends that we are seeing. People are starting to, tackle this part. But mostly, we see it globally, to be honest. And we have seen also in some use cases that have been implemented in the globe by SAS, tackling with synthetic data. When we talk about synthetic data, it's like a replica of the actual production environment of a company. We used it mostly for testing the rules and the scenarios and the outcomes of the analytical models that we establish in the monitoring systems. And the advantage of that is actually we are not touching production data, and we are actually keeping the privacy and protect it from model managed tweaks. So we have a more efficient testing mechanism when we are trying to establish new scenarios or new rules. It is important really in banks that are operating globally across the globe. We heavily see advantages on that area.
Okay, perfect. Now at least we had some idea. We have understood, the risk landscape is changing and the rise of the technologies. So let me shift to the skills transformation and the impact of the organizations considering the rise of these new technologies, AI, machine learning, and so on. So team, like very open question. What skills will be required, especially for the compliance officials in the long term? You may say 5 to 10 years or even up to you.
I'm glad you asked that question, and I think it's one that we need to pay attention to. There is a huge risk that's opening up in front of us in this area. Perhaps I need to explain that. So, very often when we talk about skills in the context of AI, the narrative moves to those things that AI can't do. And so you think of soft skills like communication, empathy. You think of perhaps more strategic thinking that AI perhaps can't achieve. Big picture thinking. And that's useful, but there's a big caveat to this, and I think this is the thing that there isn't enough attention being paid to. If we define future human skills in terms of what AI can't do, then we become hostage. We become hostage to AI not developing any further than we currently anticipate. And all of those things that I've just mentioned, and so many of the things that I see on social media and on platforms like this being discussed, those things that apparently AI can't do, I'm not sure holds water. I'm not sure that we can be confident that 5 years from now that AI won't be able to see the bigger picture, to understand the strategic context, or even relate on an interpersonal basis. AI's got capabilities, for instance, in that area that we as human beings don't have. It can read the dilation in people's eyes, the change of tone, heart rate, breathing rate. And it may be that AI very quickly is better able to empathize, for instance, than human beings are in ordinary circumstances. So there is a risk that we define our future role in terms of what AI won't do. I hope that makes some sense. So on the one hand, you've got AI accelerating incredibly in terms of its capabilities, its skills. On the other side of the coin, you've got that thing I mentioned a moment ago, and that is the very real risk that human beings will outsource to AI basic things that we take for granted at the moment. And that will, over time, lead within individuals to an atrophy, a loss of skills, and this may even operate at a generational level as well, as we're bringing people through university, developing different skills, because again and again we're allowing AI to do the hard work. I think it was Jung that said, beware wisdom that is achieved cheaply. And I think what he was getting at was, if we don't do the hard work, then we aren't going to develop those skills at depth. And I think that creates a risk for 5 and 10 years from now that is very difficult to anticipate. So that's all rather negative. We have to embrace AI, of course, but I think to do that responsibly, we need to be very aware of that relationship between human beings and AI and how that evolves. So we don't become a servant to AI rather than the other way around. So when I'm talking to students, or when I'm asked to comment about future skills, I talk about 4 things in this context. And the first is that we working within compliance need to have a profound understanding of our area. Now, I'm going to do something. I'm going to take a liberty now, if I may. I've been asked to mention the partnership that the ICA, the International Compliance Association,
Please go ahead.
it's okay. So I've been asked to mention this. I hope that's all right. So
We have time now.
and so today, I think, we're signing a formal partnership between the ICA and the Turkish Compliance Association, where we're going to facilitate, we hope, to support the continued development of your members and others associated with the association in the context of training in counter-financial crime and governance and risk. And our training runs from certificate to postgraduate diploma. But that's not what I'm here to talk about, but I think it's just worth mentioning. That's the first thing I emphasize, that we need to have a profound understanding. So we're not dependent on AI, maybe to answer the little questions, but the big questions we need to reserve to ourselves. The second thing I think we need to develop is a comprehensive understanding of the businesses that we serve. Now, that's not just true in this context, it's true anyway, but there is a real danger, and I see this when I talk to compliance professionals. There is a sense that I get that so often they don't really understand the business. What's the operating model? What's the supply chain? What are the key strategic risks? How does compliance support the business enabling their business objectives? It tends to be in the so often it tends to be in the context of how can we ensure the business doesn't fall foul of regulatory requirements, which is true, of course, but compliance goes much deeper than that. So that, I think, is the second area. The third is understanding AI. I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but AI literacy obviously is so important. And as part of that, we need to carve out a relationship with AI that is a positive and a constructive one, where we can meet our business goals, but also the wider goals around culture and compliance in a way that is in partnership with AI rather than the other way around. And finally, the fourth skill I think we need to develop is agility. And I guess by that I mean the ability to move between roles, recognizing that some of the core skills we'll keep, but we need to have the ability to recognize, well, this thing here that we've been doing for the last 5 years is fundamentally changed by the deployment of AI. I need now to move into a different role and to show the agility and flexibility to do that, and to do it in a way which keeps my core skills but complements that into a new role.
In other words, can we just summarize it like both for AI-oriented and human-centered skills that we need to take into the account for the next 5 years? Okay.
Yeah, it's that balance, isn't it?
Okay, that's
Yes.
great. So let me continue with İlkay Hanım to understand how the organizations are adapting to this transformation. So how do you see the first, I have two questions, but let me start with the first one. So how do you see the maturity of using AI, machine learning, and other technologies in the financial institutions?
I mean, like, I wanted to also mention a global survey that has been done very recently in February by ECAMS. Maybe you have read through it. Most of the global banks that have responded to this survey have said that they are thinking of implementing Gen AI into their anti-fraud program. So globally, we are aware of that this technology is coming. We need to adapt it. But locally in Turkey, we have, like I said before, very limited implementation of the technological capabilities that are in our hands. And it's due to the regulation, the resistance to change in the cultural organizations. We sometimes also see that the organizational levels are not ready to adopt these technologies because they don't have the skill set like the data science know-how or the statistics know-how in the compliance departments. Of course, usually locally we are providing a lot of help during the maintenance of these analytical models or these rules to our customers, but it's really limited except for very big global banks. We can say that mid-sized and small-sized banks do not have this capabilities, skill sets yet. But On the other hand, we see that the payment system companies are rising. So they all, in Turkey especially, started as startups, and they built from scratch their own data platforms, their own core payment systems software. So we see a lot of data scientists working in those environments, and they have been hiring also from most of the banks, the talents. So it's a challenge to find the right capability, but it's doable because there are trainings that are provided by software providers, by especially SaaS or Nice Actimize if you have, and other trainings. So I think it's essential to at least have the junior people get basic training for data science and programming, because the compliance teams themselves will need to operate, like Tim said, together with the agent AIs in maybe less than 5 years' time.
Nice. So although you just mentioned something about the challenges related to some limitations due to regulatory requirements, what other challenges are you observing especially for the implementation of this AI and other technologies in the market?
During most of the projects that we are doing, especially we do mostly projects in Turkey and also some part of Asia. We see, of course, SaaS has more global implementation use cases, but for us locally, we see a lot of problems during the data sources. I'm placing the data sources and making sure where the data can be ingested through our internal model. Because if we don't have this standardized data model, the rules, the AI model, the analytical programs, you can have the best technology, but if you don't have the data, we cannot do any work around that. So we are actually usually using a lot of time to make sense of what is the data, where is the data, who is the owner of the data, and what is the process. Even when we start doing the project in the first 1 or 2 months, we explain so many issues in the process. So usually we work with compliance departments, fraud prevention or internal audit departments. They need to go back to business owners in the bank or in the insurance company and change the process to make sure that the data is coming correctly into the data model. So we spent a lot of time on that still. It surprises me, but it's still taking a lot of time. And we see a lot of cultural resistance, to be honest, because the organizations usually, they have been operating a lot. They have very, strictly working compliance or, fraud prevention professionals. They have a know-how. And they don't want to change their operational process. They don't want to rely on the alerts that we are producing with an analytical model that they don't understand fully. So it takes a lot of time also to, in that area, we really use the support of the project sponsors a lot. We need to have the project sponsors come back to the project team or even the other business owners saying that, okay, this is crucial for the regulatory compliance of the firm. So we need to hold on to our KPIs and we need to push on the target. So we do, like in many technology projects, we use a lot of the support from the project team. So it's essential for us also to have a dedicated team when we do the projects.
Okay. There are a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
As far as even as a compliance professional, we are also facing lots of challenges due to regulatory changes, the implementation of the system due to regulatory limitations, but we are all on the same side with you, I can rest assured. Okay, so let us continue with advanced analytic and proactive compliance management. Mr. Mukin, again, across the institutions you work in, which areas, I can start with that one, which areas have you seen the most effective adoption of AI? From reactive to proactive, or from detection to efficiency maybe? If you can just give us a few samples based on your experience.
Yeah, I look at it in two ways, and then just to make it to simplify it, I look at it from effectiveness perspective. You know, we played with, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, of false positives that, you know, we have to work and close, and it's unnecessary, right? At the moment, you know, the solutions are not effective enough, right? And that's based on, you know, the historical technologies that were available at the time. Now, there's way better technologies. You know, Ilke mentioned machine learning, but there's, you know, natural language processing. There's large language models. There's, you know, all sorts of capabilities that are available that, you know, that us as a R&D organization, as a software vendor, we are looking to use to understand which is the best technology to actually create better, more effective alerts. Reduce the number of alerts, but the quality of those alerts should be good. Okay, let's face it. I mean, AI has been around for a little while. Machine learning's been around for at least 10 years, and unfortunately, the criminals are using AI. They're probably ahead of the game compared to us, and we're always chasing. And we need to work faster. So you know, we should be embracing this technology. And I come back to Tim. You know, there is a balance here, right? We can't just let AI make the decision, do the work. Otherwise, we're all going to get stupid, unfortunately, right? So we have to have a balance here, right? Let AI do what it's good at. Let's do all of that mundane work that, you know, we as compliance people don't want to be doing, right? You know, we don't want to be doing Google searches and reading lots and lots of material, but let's get AI to do a lot of this hard work that is unnecessary. Let's summarize the adverse media when we've got an issue. So I see definitely a work to be done when it comes to having much better, more effective alerts. You know, as I mentioned, criminal organizations are ahead of the game. They're coming up with much more ingenious ways of undertaking money laundering, and we need to address that from a technology perspective. And I think we're getting there, right? We're definitely, there's solutions out there that provide anomaly detection, that provide, you know, network analytics that look for, you know, all sorts of things that historically we never used to, right? So that's the first area, is effectiveness, right? The second area is efficiency, all right? So once we have these alerts, I mentioned, you know, already, you know, having to do Google searches and reading all sorts of data, you know, but if we can use technologies that can summarize, understand the semantics of the issue. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing in the news article, right? You know, being able to provide that in a summarized format to us from a compliance perspective as investigators, as analysts, reducing that time in the investigation is definitely a positive thing, right? And I think historically it's been very reactive, okay? You know, we've all been on ChatGPT and we've asked questions, etc. I don't think that's the way forward when it comes to investigations. I think the way forward is being much more proactive. If large language models, etc., can provide that information to us, provide a summary, provide the next best action to undertake, given that this is a summary of the issue in hand, and provide you a more proactive approach, I think that's the way to be going. And I think the technology is getting there. We're exploring agentic AI. Generative AI has been around for a little while. Agentic AI is where the future is, where rather than being reactive, it's being much more proactive, providing you answers, providing you a guidance to say, this is where you should be looking. But not taking away that human element and not making you stupid is also very important, right? It's giving you guidance, but also at the same time saying, is this correct or not? As a human, you should be actually training and providing that learning back to that AI model, whatever it is, whether it's large language and natural language processing, machine learning, it needs to have that feedback mechanism back. So I think I'm excited, but as you know, there needs to be a balance. But I think then there has to be a much more proactive way of AI providing that information back to us, right? And providing not only effective but efficiency gains.
Yeah. So your insights, especially regarding shifting from reactive to proactive analytics, are really valuable in this approach. So I will continue with you, Mukin. So when we check the institutions adopting AI, how do you see them evaluating the use cases and prioritizing where AI should be applied for?
It varies. It varies with the organizations I speak with. Some are plagued with huge numbers of false positives, as I mentioned. So there may be a push for much more effective alerts and reduction of those false positives. Others are plagued with very expensive investigative costs, right? If you go to the UK, there's a large bank in the UK which, they spend millions and millions of pounds on investigation, and that's not because they've got huge numbers of alerts. It's just the cost of hiring compliance officers in the UK is quite expensive. So if you go to any C-level of any organization, their number one objective is let's reduce. Unfortunately, AML is a cost to the organization. So if you go to any C-level entity in any financial organization, they will say let's reduce cost. Now, whether that is on the having better alerts or having better, more efficient investigations, it varies organization by organization. But definitely, whenever we're asked to provide a total cost of ownership back to any organization to say, if you use our software, you're going to have this X amount number of savings, it's always a positive number that we're coming back with. I've never once come back and said, actually, it's more costly to use our software, right? Because unfortunately, it's having to undertake regulated AML operations is a costly, scenario, unfortunately, right? So I see savings all the way throughout. As I mentioned, from data gathering, detection, investigation through to optimization. There's savings all the way through as well.
Yeah, so team, moving forward from Mukin's feedback related to saving to reduce the costs, not only just for the software, but from the other angles as well. So how is the role of compliance affected with this digitalization agenda?
I think this gives us a fantastic opportunity within compliance to further embed our role within organizations. So let's put this into context. Compliance has evolved, hasn't it, over the last 20 or 30 years. It's moved from being seen as just a small part of the organization that ensured that we were legal and compliant with, 20 years ago, a relatively small number of regulations. Of course, the regulatory environment has grown since that time, but so has the compliance role. And increasingly, it's seen not as the business prevention police, as I've heard them described in similar roles, but described as a partner, an enabling partner within the business. And here we've got an opportunity as fundamental change is taking place. Just to introduce AI across a number of platforms will inevitably mean change in systems, procedures, and most likely architecture within the business. These things don't take place in isolation. And so compliance has the opportunity to place itself at the forefront of this change. So rather than positioning itself as, you figure out what you want to do, and then you'll come and ask us whether that will be compliant with the relevant regulations, and we'll help you to make sure that what you want to do is. I think we can change the tone or continue to change the tone so we are a partner, we are at the table, we're part of the discussion around that wide range of activity across a business, not just in the context of counter-financial crime, anti-money laundering, but across all the business change activity. There's an opportunity to be more proactive, to be part of the conversation early on, and to position compliance as an enabling rather than a restricting capability. Now there's nuance in that. It's a challenge around how that's achieved. And to some extent, that's going to be determined by the strategic direction of the organisation, the board, the chair, the CEO, and their attitude towards compliance. But we've got an opportunity in amongst all of this change, I think, to be driving and positioning ourselves as the enabling part of the business rather than one that holds the business back. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you, team. So even this wraps the core of our discussion on the session, I may say. I would like to continue with some strategic outlook, although İlkay Hanım mentioned some global and local trends, but we may deep dive a bit on these trends, where AI is being used most effectively and how it is being implemented.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we are expecting to, like I said before, the use of Gen AI to be increased also through the compliance processes. I mean, I mentioned that we use heavily machine learning, predictive analytics, network analytics to detect patterns and hidden organizations that are doing fraud or AML. But of course, we need to be helping with the operational side of things. So we are actually being more effective in detection. So we are using machine learning and advanced analytics to reduce the false positives, like Mümkün said. But we also need to help the actual compliance professionals to do their jobs. I think there is a way to go in there. I mean, we see in the strategic surveys and outlooks reports in the other technology providers as well. Most of the technology providers like us are heavily investing in generative AI. By this, I mean they are trying to establish their own language models, or they are trying to betterize the neural network models, as well as working on synthetic data, etc., or digital twinning technologies. These kind of technologies are mostly used, like I said, limited in financial services. But I think as time goes by and people are more capable of understanding the science behind it, and they are used to, now everyone basically is used to have ChatGPT or their own, enterprise GPT during their daily course of work. But I think as time goes by, they will also have some agentic AI working together with them, like Mümkün said. And we also in SaaS as a software provider are heavily investing on those and optimizing these processes and trying to make sure the compliance professionals don't spend too much time also on the operational side of things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, İlkay. So one short closing sentence from team. Although you mentioned pros, cons, the key challenges, AI-oriented, human-centered skills, the transformation. So what should the compliance leaders prioritize next year in 2026?
Can it be a long sentence? Or longish, not too long. So we've talked about a lot of change. Regulatory change, introduction of new systems, new capabilities, geopolitical change that will impact on this, as well as we've talked about the evolving criminal threat. I think we're going to be really busy as compliance leaders over the next few years. And I think the real danger is that we become so caught up in this activity that we lose sight of our most important asset, and that, of course, is our people. And I guess the thing that I'd want to encourage and I'd want to finish on is let's try and keep up with and support and enable our people through what is quite traumatic, I think, for many, in terms of the nature and the amount of change that is faced.
Thank you. So I think we are saving our time. As I can just conclude with one sentence as we move forward. The institutions that adapt early, invest in skills, and embrace the technology with discipline, I believe that they will lead the next era of compliance. So if now we have few minutes, I think 5 minutes for the questions. If our audience have any questions, soru sormak isteyen arkadaşlar, yöneticilerimiz. Bir mikrofon uzatabilir miyiz acaba? Mikrofonumuz var mı?
Galiba duyuyoruz aslında.
Şunu uzatalım mı size?
Now it's working. So let me introduce myself. I'm banking supervisor at Turkish Banking Regulatory Authority, BRSA. So I would like to ask you for speakers, what would you advise for regulators like Financial Crime Authority and Banking Regulatory Authority to tackle with AI and to use of AI in their supervision areas? So we're seeing unprecedented change in the financial technologies. So what would you say about to make supervision on banking and other financial sectors? That's my question.
Anyone wants to reply on this? Okay.
Could I?
Yeah.
So it's a really important question. And I'm going to answer it perhaps in the way that you didn't expect, but we are, of course, as regulators, governed by the Financial Action Task Force and anticipating the next mutual evaluation, and we need to pay close attention to the framework that we're working within, the 40 recommendations. And AI will help us to do that. But I think the danger from a regulatory perspective, if I can, I mean, you've asked the question, so I'm going to be candid, it is, for me, I think we could change the question to how can we best achieve our objective of defeating and preventing money laundering and terrorist financing. You might say, well, that's the same thing, isn't it? Meeting FATF requirements and preventing money laundering and terrorist financing. But candidly, I don't think they always are. Yeah. And so I think one of the regulatory challenges is to find a way to meet FATF requirements, but to do it in a way that really does make a difference in that space, rather than being an exercise in bureaucracy.
Any further questions for our speakers? We may get like one last question, as we have 2 minutes. Okay, thank you very much for your insightful and contributions. Thank you.
Tamam. Şuraya mı geleceğiz?